Jessica woke up early on her 25th birthday. For most people, birthdays mean celebration, laughter, maybe even a surprise or two. But for Jessica, birthdays meant silence, waiting, and disappointment. She moved through the kitchen with practice motions, frying eggs, stirring porridge, preparing breakfast the way her husband Victor liked it, the way her little boy Lucas liked it. The smell of food filled the air, warm and homely, but her heart felt heavy. As Victor stepped into the hallway with Lucas at his side, Jessica hesitated. She wanted to speak, but the words felt like pebbles lodged in her throat. Finally, she forced them out. "Today is my birthday," she said softly. "Can you and Lucas come home early for dinner tonight?" The request sounded simple, but inside, she knew what she was asking was almost impossible. Because today wasn't just her birthday, it was Emma's birthday too. Emma, Victor's first love. Emma, the woman he had never stopped caring about. Jessica's heart squeezed as she watched his indifferent face. Asking him to choose between her and Emma felt like humiliating herself. But she couldn't help it. At that moment, her grandmother's weak voice echoed in her mind. Just days before, when the doctor had warned that time was running out, Grandma had smiled and whispered, "Don't cry, my dear. I promised I'd stay until your birthday. Grandma won't leave before then." Jessica clung to that promise like it was a life raft. She hurried to the car window before they drove off, standing in the cold morning air, her voice trembling. "Just come back for dinner, that's all I'm asking." But both Victor and Lucas looked at her with the same cold, indifferent expression. The next moment, the car pulled away, leaving her standing frozen in place, clutching nothing but fading hope. Hours crawled by. Jessica convinced herself that because Victor hadn't explicitly refused, maybe, just maybe, there was still hope. That afternoon, she walked through the supermarket aisles, carefully picking out all the foods Victor and Lucas loved. Back home, she laid them out on the table, the way a loving wife and mother always would. Then she went to the hospital to bring her grandmother home. Frail, pale, but smiling warmly. Grandma carried a small gift in her bag, a limited edition toy race car for Lucas. "Lucas should be here soon," Grandma said, her eyes fixed on the door, filled with hope. Jessica tried to persuade her to eat, but Grandma shook her head. "Birthdays are meant to be spent together as a family. We can't start without them." From 7 p.m. to 10 p.m., the food grew cold, untouched. The candles melted into puddles of wax. Still, there was no sign of Victor or Lucas. Desperate, Jessica dialed Victor's number. After countless rejections, he finally answered. The sound of laughter burst through the line before his impatient voice followed. "Do you need something?" Jessica's voice cracked. "Grandma's here. Please come home and spend my birthday with me. I'm begging you, Victor." There was a pause. Then his sneer cut through the phone. "Jessica, don't forget your place. Today is Emma's birthday. Don't ruin my night." Her heart sank. Of course. Emma again. Emma always. And then she heard it, the sweet, playful voice of Emma herself. "Come eat the cake, Victor. The first piece goes to our Lucas." "Okay." Jessica's chest tightened, her breath catching. And then came Lucas's innocent, piercing words. "Thank you, Aunt Emma. You're the best. I wish you were my mommy." The words sliced through Jessica like a knife. "Jessica," Victor began, his breath hitching, as if he wanted to say something more. But for her, there was nothing left to hear. She hung up, her trembling fingers trying desperately to shut out the sound of their laughter. The sound of her own son wishing another woman was his mother. When she walked back into the living room, Grandma's concerned eyes searched her face. Jessica forced a smile, choking back tears. "Grandma, Victor is busy with work. And Lucas had an extra class at school," she lied. Grandma nodded slowly, as if she wanted to believe her, and gently pulled her down to sit. Together they shared the birthday cake. The frosting was sweet. Unbearably so sweet it made Jessica's chest ache. The soft lamplight reflected off Grandma's silver hair like the final flicker of a candle, glowing but fragile. "Jessica, you must smile, be happy," Grandma whispered, her voice tender. "You are Grandma's treasure." Her voice trailed off into violent coughing. Jessica's heart leapt in panic. She reached for her grandmother's hand. But in the next moment, it went limp. The life drained from her, just like that. The slice of cake fell from Jessica's hand onto the floor. Her world collapsed. As the emergency room doors slammed shut, Jessica was left sobbing in the hallway. Just then, her phone lit up. On the screen was Emma's latest post. Victor, Lucas, and Emma together, smiling like the perfect family. At that moment, Jessica realized her grandmother was gone, her son didn't want her, and her husband had already replaced her. But she had no idea. The worst was yet to come. The hallway outside the emergency room smelled like antiseptic and stale coffee. Under the fluorescent lights, Jessica looked smaller than before, like grief had peeled away everything extra and left only bone, skin, and tremor. Nurses rushed past with charts and 4 poles. Somewhere, a monitor beeped. Somewhere, a child cried. But inside Jessica, everything had gone silent, like a snow globe right after you shake it. When the last few flakes hang in the air before they fall. She stared at the red emergency sign over the swinging doors. Minutes stretched into an hour, then slurred into something that didn't keep time. She touched the indent on her ring finger. It was there even when she took the ring off, like a shadow of a promise that never really existed. Her phone buzzed. She almost didn't look. When she finally did, the screen punched the air out of her lungs. Emma's newest post. A neatly edited video. Warm filter, upbeat music, balloons in the background. Lucas leaned over with that innocent, movie trailer smile and kissed Emma's cheek. Happy birthday, pretty sister. Cut to Victor, whose face was smeared with cake, eyes soft, laughter easy. He was a man Jessica didn't recognize, tender, playful, present. With Emma, he was capable of sweetness. With Jessica, he was stone. Something inside her loosened, then tore. She turned off the screen, but the afterimage burned behind her eyelids, the perfect family, without her. Her body folded into the plastic chair. She pressed her knuckles to her mouth to keep the sound in. The kind that empties a room, the kind that makes strangers stare. She tasted frosting. She didn't remember eating any. She leaned back, closed her eyes. And the memory came, uninvited but impossible to stop. 17. Shoes with holes. Pride held together with tape and stubbornness. The day they found her and brought her home. She walked into a house that didn't belong to her, learning quickly that a chandelier can look beautiful and still cast shadows that swallow you whole. Victor stood near the stairs. A grey turtleneck and the careless grace of someone who never had to ask if he belonged. He looked at her like he wasn't sure whether to pity her or protect her. "Are you cold?" he asked, guiding her into the living room. She nodded, but her heart was doing fireworks, messy, loud, impossible to hide. Then Emma appeared, porcelain and tears. She fell to her knees in front of Jessica. "I'll give everything back," she cried. "I never meant to take your life." In that instant, something changed in Victor's eyes. Surprise curdled into suspicion. He didn't know the whole story, but he knew which one felt better to believe. The nurse's voice cut through the fog. She said gently. "We did everything we could." The door swung open. Cold air rushed the hallway. The word could hung in the quiet like a balloon losing air. "You can go in and say your goodbyes now." Jessica stood. Her legs weren't legs, they were memory. She walked anyway. Inside, the room hummed with low machines and higher sorrow. Grandma's face looked softer than it had an hour ago, like grief had smoothed all the pain lines. The way a lake looks after the wind drops. Jessica took her hand. It was warm. Not for long. "I brought the cake," Jessica whispered, even though it didn't matter. She brushed a curl of silver hair off Grandma's forehead. "You kept your promise. You made it to my birthday." She smiled, and the smile was the bravest thing she'd done in years. The next hour moved like a scene with no sound. Papers. Signatures. A simple personal history reduced to boxes to check. The word deceased stamped somewhere with a sound that felt too loud. Outside the hospital. The night air snapped at her face. She dialed Victor. It rang and then picked up into laughter and clinking glasses. "Do you need something?" he said, bored. She swallowed. "Grandma is gone." The pause was brief. "I'm sorry," he said, but there was music. And the sound of Emma's voice behind him. "Come on, Victor. Cake for Lucas." Jessica nodded even though he couldn't see. "You should finish the party," she said. "Don't let me ruin your night." She hung up before he answered. By the time she reached the crematorium, morning was a rumor. The place was quiet in the way all places of endings are, like everything that could be said has already been said. And the rest is just the choreography of goodbye. They slid the gurney under the metal hood. A white cloth lifted, then fell. The red mouth of the furnace glowed. Fire licked. Time bent. Jessica kept waiting for the scream to tear out of her throat. It didn't. The silence inside her was louder. Someone asked if she wanted a chair. She shook her head, afraid she'd never get up again. Someone asked if she wanted water. She didn't know how to drink anymore. When it was over, they handed her a small, heavy box. Ridiculous, how a whole person could fit inside something so small. She held it to her chest like a newborn. Outside, the first light of morning scraped across the sky. Harsh and thin. A bird landed on a power line, shivered once, flew on. The city was awake now. People with coffee and appointments. Car horns. A woman in a bright coat rushing to catch a bus. Life doesn't stop. It doesn't even slow down. It just steps around your grief and keeps going. When Jessica reached the house, the housekeeper froze. Why are you back? Mister. Victor said he was taking young master on a trip. A trip. Jessica saw it instantly. Emma in the passenger seat, Lucas smiling in the rearview mirror. Victor's hand drumming the steering wheel in time with a playlist she didn't pick. The old Jessica would have called. Screamed. Demanded. But the woman holding a small, heavy box had nothing left to spend on noise that never changed anything. She went upstairs, pulled a suitcase from the closet, and began to pack. It felt like she was packing someone else's life. The blue sweater Lucas said he hated. The dress Victor never noticed. The photos she never hung up because the faces were wrong. She paused by the bedroom desk. The morning light fell across a manila envelope. Divorce papers. She'd signed them last week in the kitchen with the dishwasher humming and the kettle boiling. Mundane appliances keeping beat for a sacred ceremony. She'd slid the envelope under a stack of magazines because the truth needed somewhere to hide until she was ready to say it out loud. Now, she pulled it free and placed it on top. She took a last look around the room. The bed. Cold and made. The mirror reflecting a woman she barely recognized. Cheekbones she didn't know were that sharp. Eyes rimmed red but steady. Her phone buzzed again. A message from Victor. Victor, Lucas's stomach hurts. He wants the porridge you make. She stared at the words. A year ago, this would have lifted her. Like a hand reaching down into the dark. Today, it felt like a test. Jessica, I'm leaving. Check the bedroom desk. Sign the documents. She put the phone face down. Downstairs, the driver took a suitcase. The housekeeper reached out as if to hug her, then stopped, feeling invisible lines she wasn't allowed to cross. Jessica smiled at her anyway. Not an apology, just gratitude. The ride to the airport slid past in a blur of traffic and red lights, and people who would never know a woman in the backseat was leaving her life. She buried her face in the scarf Grandma knitted last winter. Loose stitches, patient work. She breathed in the faint smell of soap and something that could have been lavender or could have been memory. The terminal was a cathedral of motion. Announcements echoed. Wheels clicked across tile. A child laughed at a candy display. A man argued into his phone, then laughed at his own joke. Jessica found a seat by the window at the gate. Planes lifted like punctuation marks at the end of long sentences. A little girl pressed her palms to the glass, leaving small ghosts of excitement behind. Jessica pulled out her phone and scrolled. Habit, reflex, punishment. Emma's story was still at the top. Now they were blowing candles. Lucas clapped, cheeks puffed, eyes bright. Victor leaned over him, kissed the side of his head. The caption read, "Nothing better than family." A heart emoji. Gold confetti filter. Jessica clicked the volume up, then down, then off. She watched them, watched herself watching them, and finally set the phone face down on her lap. Something loosened in her, like a knot coming undone. Not joy. Not relief. Just truth finally sitting in the room. Her phone rang. Victor. She let it ring once, twice, 3 times, then answered. Where are you? The words were clipped, like he was mad she didn't read his mind. In the background, she could hear Lucas's whine. I want Mommy's breakfast. I'm leaving, Jessica said. Calm. Simple. A weather report. The divorce papers are on the bedroom desk. Sign them. Silence. He finally said. Don't forget the prenup. You keep this up. You won't get a cent. Jessica looked out at a plane lifting into cloud. Keep it, she said. Surprising herself with how easy it was. All of it. The line crackled. Is this about your birthday? He asked. As if it was small, as if the single syllable's birthday could hold everything that died last night. I'll make it up to you. She smiled a tired, almost tender smile, at him. At the old version of herself who would have taken that crumb and called it cake. No need, she said. You already did. She hung up. The gate agent announced pre-boarding. Jessica stood. The scarf slid off her shoulder. She caught it with one hand, the urn pressed against her ribs with the other. She stepped into the line. Then stepped out. She looked down at the urn. We are going west, Grandma, she whispered. Home. Over the PA. A pilot joked about tailwinds. People chuckled like they were all in on it. The world was moving again. And this time she was moving with it. At 30,000 feet, she slept with her forehead against the window. The cold glass a strange kind of mercy. She dreamed she was back in that house with the chandelier. She was trying to use a knife and fork the way Emma did, trying not to make noise. Trying to disappear the way polite girls are taught to disappear. The plate tipped. Sauce slid. Victor handed her a napkin with the same face he'd make for a stranger. In the dream, she stood. He took the napkin and said, No. She woke with a word in her mouth. The plane dipped, then leveled. A child giggled somewhere in row 14. The sky outside was the color of possibility. When they landed, the air felt different, thinner, cleaner, like it had been scrubbed by wind. The mountains cut the horizon into something honest. At baggage claim, Jessica balanced the urn and her suitcase and the scarf that kept slipping. A man in a work jacket offered to help. She shook her head, smiling. I've got it, she said. And for once, it was true. She rented a small car that smelled like oranges and new beginnings. She drove west until the road forgot how to be a road and turned into a promise. The fields opened. Cattle grazed like moving commas in a sentence too long to diagram. She thought about the school she'd emailed weeks ago. The principal had written back, We could use someone like you. The pay was small, the work big, the reward something you can't put in a bank. She touched the scarf again. We made it, she told the woman who taught her how to be brave just by staying. Her phone buzzed once more. A voicemail from Victor. He didn't say, I love you. He didn't say, I'm sorry. He said, Lucas's stomach hurts. Jessica deleted it. The sun was going down when she pulled into the little town where the school was. The last light made everything gold. The kind of gold you can't buy, only witness. She parked, stepped out, and stood quiet for a moment, listening to a world that didn't require her to be anything she wasn't. She took the urn in both hands. Tomorrow, she said, we'll take you home. A breeze moved through the tall grass like a hand smoothing a wrinkled sheet. Jessica breathed in. The air tasted like dust and pine and something almost like hope. At sunrise, Jessica will lay her grandmother to rest and try to start over. But the past isn't done with her, because when she returns home for one last look, a memory she's tried to bury will claw its way back. The wedding night, the phone call. And the first time Victor chose Emma, and chose to break Jessica, on purpose. The crematorium was quiet in the way only places of endings could be. Jessica stood, frozen, as the heavy doors slid shut and the heat roared behind them. The white cloth had been lifted, and the flames had already begun their work. For a long moment, she couldn't move. Her mind refused to connect the woman who used to tuck her into bed. The woman who whispered blessings into her ear. With the ashes that would soon be handed back to her in a box far too small. By the time she stumbled outside, morning had come. People bustled down the street with coffee cups in hand. Rushing to jobs and meetings, their lives untouched by hers. Life kept going. For Jessica, time had stopped. She held the urn to her chest like it was the only anchor left in a world determined to drift her away. When she returned home, the housekeeper blinked in surprise. Why are you back? Didn't Mr. Victor say he was taking the young master on a trip? Jessica froze. A trip? At a time like this? Of course. Emma again. Emma, who seemed to slip into her place so easily. At birthdays, at dinners. Even in her son's affections. In the past, Jessica might have raged. She might have called Victor. Screamed down the line, demanded he explain. But now, clutching the box of ashes, she didn't have the energy. Rage required strength. She had none left to spare. She walked upstairs, pulled out a suitcase, and began to pack. The bedroom was filled with echoes. Her son's laughter, Victor's footsteps, her own muffled tears. Each piece of clothing folded into the bag was a memory. The sweater Lucas once called ugly. The dress Victor never noticed. The shoes she wore the night she came back to this house, thinking she might finally belong. On the desk sat a manila envelope. Divorce papers. She had already signed them, her signature steady, final. She placed them on top of the suitcase like a period at the end of a sentence she was finally ready to stop reading. She paused in the doorway, turned back, and let her eyes sweep across the room one last time. The bed neatly made. The curtains drawn. The mirror reflecting a woman she barely recognized. That woman had given everything, her youth, her body, her loyalty, and had been rewarded with betrayal, neglect, and humiliation. That woman was leaving tonight. The car horn outside snapped her out of her thoughts. The rideshare driver was waiting. As she stepped out, the memories hit her like ghosts rushing through the open door. Her wedding night. She had been nervous, hopeful, maybe even a little excited. But everything had shattered the moment Victor's phone rang. It was Emma. Crying. Claiming she'd been kidnapped. Victor had panicked. His hands had shaken as he drove. And when Jessica tried to calm him, he turned his panic into anger at her. He had kicked her out of the car, leaving her alone on a dark road in her wedding dress. High heels cutting into her feet. She had walked for hours, blood pooling in her shoes. The night air clawing at her skin. By the time she staggered home, she was broken, inside and out. Victor arrived later, his face twisted with fury. Emma's hand had been injured. And he was convinced Jessica was to blame. His words cut deeper than knives. How dare you hurt her? Emma is my bottom line. If anything happens to her, I will never forgive you. And then came the cruelty that would mark their marriage. He had grabbed her, forcing her under him. His movements were rough, mechanical, fueled by rage instead of tenderness. She remembered the weight of him pressing her down, the way his lips refused to meet hers, the way his teeth sank into her collarbone as if to brand her with shame. Isn't this what you wanted? He sneered, his dark eyes inches from her face. To be my wife. Is this enough for you? In that moment, Jessica had understood. He would never see her as anything but an intruder. A mistake. A shadow cast by Emma's light. The sound of the driver honking again dragged her back into the present. She blinked, pushing the memory down where it belonged. She zipped the suitcase, took one last look at the house, and walked out the door. The rideshare driver opened the trunk, and Jessica slid the suitcase inside. Her body felt heavy, but her mind was strangely clear. For 6 years, she had endured humiliation, cruelty, indifference. She had excused it, explained it away, told herself it was for Lucas's sake, or Grandma's. But Grandma was gone. Lucas had chosen Emma. And Victor had never chosen her at all. As the car pulled away from the house, Jessica didn't look back. Some places don't deserve a farewell. At the train station, the crowd pressed around her, strangers carrying their own stories, their own griefs, their own hopes. Jessica clutched the urn tighter. She bought a ticket west. The train rattled forward, carrying her away from the city, away from Victor, away from the woman she used to be. Outside the window, the scenery blurred. Fields stretched out endlessly. Herds of cattle dotted the horizon like moving shadows. For the first time in years, Jessica let herself breathe. She whispered into the urn, into the silence, "Grandma, I'm taking you home." The train swayed gently. and exhaustion finally pulled her under. In her dream, she was 17 again, standing in that grand house with holes in her shoes. Victor had looked at her with something close to curiosity, maybe even kindness. But then Emma had fallen to her knees, sobbing, and Victor's gaze had shifted into disdain. It had never shifted back. Jessica woke with a jolt, the train whistle echoing like a warning. She touched the urn, grounding herself. This was her new life. The old one was behind her now, ashes, like Grandma. Or so she thought. Because as the train sped forward, her phone began to ring. Victor's name lit up the screen. She almost didn't answer. Almost. But habit dies slow. She slid her thumb across the screen. "Where are you?" His voice was clipped, controlled, like he was trying not to show his temper. Jessica stared out the window. "We should get a divorce," she said flatly. For a moment, silence. Then a laugh, cold and sharp. "Jessica, don't play games." "I'm not playing." "Don't forget about the prenup. If you keep this up, you'll walk away with nothing." Jessica let the words hang, then answered with a quiet strength that surprised even herself. "I don't want your money. Not anymore." Another silence. Then Victor's voice, impatient. "Lucas's stomach hurts. He's asking for the porridge you make." Jessica closed her eyes. For 6 years, that would have melted her. Pulled her back. "Not tonight. Not anymore." "You'll figure it out," she said, and ended the call. The train roared forward, carrying her toward a future Victor couldn't control. The train cut across the plains like an arrow shot into the unknown. Jessica leaned her forehead against the glass, the cool surface grounding her as the world blurred by. Vast green fields opened up. Herds of cattle scattered like moving shadows. Somewhere in the distance, mountains rose, steady and timeless. She clutched the urn in her lap. "We are going home, Grandma," she whispered. Her voice almost lost to the hum of the wheels. The rhythm of the train was strangely soothing. She hadn't eaten more than a few cups of instant noodles, hadn't slept more than a few broken hours. But there was a calm inside her she hadn't felt in years. For the first time. She wasn't waiting for Victor. She wasn't waiting for Lucas to call her Mommy. She wasn't waiting for a seat at Emma's shadowed table. She was only moving forward. Her phone rang. Victor. For a long moment, she stared at the screen. Her pulse steady. Finally, she answered. "Where are you?" His voice was sharp, like he had a right to know. Jessica didn't flinch. "We should get a divorce." The words landed like stones dropped into water. Silence rippled on the other end. Then, a disbelieving laugh. "What are you talking about? You think I'll let you walk away? Don't forget the prenup. If you leave, you'll get nothing." Jessica's lips curved into the faintest smile, not of happiness, but of release. "Keep it. I don't want your money. Not anymore." She could almost see his expression through the phone. Confusion, anger, disbelief. For years, he thought control meant power. Tonight, control meant nothing. He tried again. "Lucas's stomach hurts. He's asking for the porridge you make." Her grip tightened on the urn. The old Jessica would have broken. She would have rushed back, clinging to the illusion of family. But not anymore. "You'll figure it out," she said calmly. And then she hung up. The train thundered forward, carrying her into a life where Victor's voice no longer held chains around her. Jessica closed her eyes. For the first time in years, she slept without fear. But freedom never comes without shadows. On New Year's Eve, her phone will ring again, not with Victor's voice, but with a plea that could drag her back into the past she swore to leave behind. The little village was alive with laughter. Children ran through the courtyard with sparklers in their hands, the crackle of firecrackers echoing against the dark hills. Jessica stood at the doorway of the schoolhouse, watching the scene with quiet wonder. She had spent months here, teaching the children how to read, braiding little girls' hair at recess, learning to smile again. Life was simple. Hard, yes, but clean. No lies.
No betrayals.
Just laughter, chalk dust, and the warmth of small hands tugging at hers. As the new year approached, the village chief had invited her to join the celebration. They slaughtered a pig, made dumplings, and brought out their best rice wine. Jessica sat with the children, their voices rising like birds. And for a moment, she felt something she hadn't in years, belonging. Her phone vibrated in her pocket. She almost ignored it. But when she glanced at the screen, her breath caught. Victor. The fireworks drowned out his first words. "Happy New Year," he said finally, his voice rough, almost hoarse. Jessica stayed silent. After a pause, he cleared his throat. "Grandfather wants to see you." Her chest tightened. "Didn't you tell him about our divorce?" Victor hesitated. "Jessica, the company's about to go public. Can't you think about the bigger picture?" There it was. Always business. Always image. She gripped the phone tighter. Her eyes on the glowing lanterns drifting into the night sky.
No, Victor.
"I can't. You said it yourself. This marriage was a mistake. Now I don't love you anymore. And I don't want to continue." For a long moment, there was only static on the line. Then his tone shifted, sharp, angry. "Jessica, you." But before he could finish, a smaller, trembling voice broke through. "Mom." "Lucas." Jessica froze. His voice was nasally, rushed. "Mum, I'm sick." In the past, she would have dropped everything. Stayed up all night, fed him soup spoon by spoon. But tonight, her heart was cold. "Then go see a doctor," she said flatly. There was silence, then the sound of muffled sobbing. "Mom, when are you coming back? Why won't you answer my messages?" Behind him, Emma's soft voice rang out. "Lucas, come inside, it's too cold." Jessica's jaw clenched. Emma was in their home already. Spending the new year with Victor and her son like she belonged there. Like Jessica had never existed. "Mom, Dad and I got you a birthday present," Lucas said through tears, desperate. "Please, come back." Jessica shut her eyes. She remembered that necklace, the one she found hidden in Victor's suit pocket half a year ago. She thought it was for her. She had waited, hoping he would surprise her. In the end, she saw it glimmering around Emma's neck. Back then, it shattered her. Tonight, it meant nothing. Her voice was steady when she answered, "I won't bother you anymore." Before Victor could reply, she ended the call. Outside, another firework bloomed, spilling gold across the night sky. Jessica stood alone in the crowd of celebration. Her heart both heavy and free. Jessica thought distance would finally break the chain. But when Lucas shows up at her school, hungry, desperate, and calling her mom in front of the children, Jessica will be forced to face the wounds she thought she had left behind. The new semester had just begun. Jessica stood in the classroom, braiding the little girls' hair. Their giggles bubbling like spring water. She guided them toward the cafeteria for lunch, her voice gentle. Steady, so unlike the woman she used to be. Just as she reached the staircase, a voice broke the rhythm of her day. "Mom." She froze. Lucas stood there, taller now, but with eyes that looked older than his years. The arrogance he once carried was gone. In its place was something raw, something desperate. Jessica turned away, pretending not to hear. One of the boys piped up, "Don't be silly. She's our teacher, not your mom." The children laughed. But Lucas's eyes reddened. He looked like a frightened rabbit, cornered, vulnerable. Still, Jessica didn't stop. She led the kids downstairs, her back straight. Later, after everyone had eaten, she felt a tug on her shirt. She turned. Lucas stood there, rubbing his stomach. His voice cracked. "Mom, I'm hungry." Her heart clenched. But she forced herself to stay cold. "If you're hungry, go eat." Still, when the children napped, Lucas didn't leave. He lingered by the door, his small frame stubborn, unyielding. Jessica ignored him until a child woke from a nightmare. Crying. She hurried to comfort the little one, only for Lucas to rush over and shove the child aside. It was the first time she had seen him behave this way. He had always been mature beyond his years. Cold even, treating her with disdain, copying Victor's distance. Now, he was nothing but a child, angry, broken, needy. "I'm so hungry, Mom," he cried louder. Afraid the noise would wake the other children, Jessica relented. She handed him a bowl of porridge. His eyes lit up, and he devoured it in big spoonfuls. But her heart didn't soften. She remembered nights of cooking until her hands blistered, learning every recipe, desperate to nourish him. And she remembered the way he used to push the bowl away, indifferent, mocking. Now he ate greedily, like this was the only thing that mattered. When he finished, Jessica pulled him aside. "Why are you here, Lucas? Does your father know?" He avoided her gaze, twisting his fingers nervously. Finally, in a whisper, "The school is having a parent-teacher meeting. I need someone to come." Her chest tightened, but her voice stayed firm. "Ask your dad. I'm not your mom anymore." Tears filled his eyes. His lips trembled. "Dad says he's busy." Jessica almost laughed. Busy. Victor was always busy, for Emma, for appearances, for anyone but her. And now Lucas carried that same excuse. Her mind flashed back to the first parent-teacher meeting years ago. Lucas had seen her bare face, her plain clothes, and his expression had darkened with shame. "All the other moms are so beautiful," he'd muttered. "You embarrass me." That wound never healed. Now, standing before her again, Lucas was crying, begging, vulnerable in a way he had never allowed himself to be. Jessica's throat tightened, but she kept her tone even. "I can't help you." She turned back to the classroom, forcing her focus onto the children who depended on her. Behind her, Lucas's sobs echoed like a ghost she couldn't shake. Jessica thought she could harden her heart. But when Victor suddenly appears at the school, watching her through the window, old wounds and new boundaries will collide. And this time, she won't stay silent. The afternoon sun slanted through the dusty classroom windows. Jessica stood at the blackboard, her chalk moving steadily as she explained pinyin to a row of eager faces. Children's hands shot up, little voices full of questions, full of life. At the back of the room sat Lucas. Quiet. Attentive. His eyes followed her every move, so different from the cold, dismissive child who once pushed her away. He raised his hand like the others, but Jessica ignored him, her heart sealed in armor. Still, he tried again. Borrowing a notebook from another student, Lucas walked toward her desk, clutching a pencil like it was a lifeline. "Mom, I don't know how to do this," he whispered. Her resolve wavered for a moment. Without speaking, she took the pencil, showed him the answer, and handed it back. Lucas's face broke into a smile, sweet, genuine, almost innocent. "Thank you, Mom." The word lingered in the air. Jessica didn't reply. She turned back to the class. And that's when she felt it. A gaze. Heavy. Watching. She glanced toward the window. Victor. He stood outside, half hidden. His expression unreadable. His lips parted slightly as if he wanted to speak but couldn't. Jessica's stomach twisted. But she didn't let it show. Instead, she walked over and pulled the curtain shut. The room dimmed. And with it, the past she was refusing to let back in. By the time class ended, the sky had opened up with drizzle. Jessica walked the last of the children home through the muddy paths. Her umbrella tilted against the wind. Lewis, her colleague, fell into step beside her, holding another umbrella. His smile was warm, steady. "You've worked hard," he said. "We weren't sure you'd adapt here. But you're stronger than anyone thought." Jessica gave a small smile. Lewis wasn't Victor. He didn't carry judgment in his voice, just quiet respect. When they reached the dormitory, the door creaked open behind them. Jessica froze. Lucas stood there, hair damp with rain, eyes wide with longing. "Mom, you're back," he said, his voice breaking. Jessica turned away, too tired to answer. And then another voice cut through the night. "Jessica." She spun around. Victor stood in the rain, his face shadowed, his eyes burning with something between anger and desperation. "Are you refusing to come back because of this pretty boy?" he snapped, glaring at Lewis.
Louis shifted uncomfortably.
But Jessica's lips curved into a cold smile. "Do you think everyone is like you? Sneaking around with other women while still married?" Victor flinched as if struck. His voice rose, his emotions unraveling. "You're really going to stay in this dump? You'd abandon me and our son for this?" Jessica's laugh was sharp. "Bitter. Abandon you? You abandoned me years ago, Victor. Tonight, I don't owe you an explanation. The rain poured harder, soaking them all. Lucas's small figure trembled between them, caught in a storm of adult choices he couldn't escape. Victor stepped forward, his voice shaking now, no longer the arrogant man she once knew. Jessica, you have to explain yourself to me. For the first time, Jessica met his gaze without fear. All right then. Let's clear things up. She opened the door and stepped inside. Victor followed, dripping rain onto the floor. While Lucas hovered, torn between them. The walls of the small dormitory closed in. The confrontation she had avoided for years was finally here. Inside the cramped room. Old wounds will be ripped open, and Victor's jealousy will explode when he sees a photo of Jessica with another man. For the first time, the roles will reverse, and he will be the one begging for answers. The dormitory smelled faintly of chalk dust and damp wood. Jessica poured herself a glass of water, her movements calm. Deliberate, refusing to let Victor's storm pull her back in. But Victor wasn't calm. He slammed his phone on the table, shoving it in front of her face. On the screen was a photo, Jessica and Louis, laughing with the village children. A local journalist had taken it during an interview. Victor's voice was low but shaking with rage. You mean I can only question you if I catch you two hugging? Is that how it is? Jessica. Jessica raised her brows, unimpressed. It's a photo, Victor. Nothing more. His anger boiled over. He pinned her against the wall, his breath hot, his eyes wild. So when it's me and Emma, you call it betrayal. But when it's you and another man, suddenly it's innocent. Her laugh was bitter. When it was you and Emma, it wasn't one photo, Victor. It was years. Trips. Dinners. Intimacy. And every time I dared to hurt, you called me dramatic. You told me I was crazy. The words cut deeper than any slap. Victor froze, his face paling as a truth slammed into him. Jessica shoved him back and straightened her clothes. After the divorce. You live your life. I'll live mine. Isn't that the freedom you wanted? For a moment, silence. The only sound was the rain hammering on the roof. Then, something in Victor cracked. He grabbed her wrist, not roughly this time, but with desperation, and pulled something from his pocket. A band-aid. He crouched down. His large hand surprisingly gentle as he pressed it against the back of her heel. You're hurt, he murmured. His voice raw. Jessica blinked, caught off guard. The gesture was tender, almost foreign. She smelled the pine cologne on his clothes, the same cologne that had once made her sneeze. The one she had begged him to change. But he never did. Emma liked it. Now, with him kneeling before her, she felt no warmth. Only exhaustion. She yanked her foot back. Get out. Victor's eyes flashed with something close to panic. Lucas stepped forward, tugging at Jessica's sleeve. His small voice trembling. Mom, please, don't make Dad leave. Jessica's heart twisted, but she hardened herself again. Out. Both of you. Victor stood, dripping rain onto the worn floor. He looked at her one last time. His eyes bloodshot, before pulling Lucas toward the door. When the door shut behind them, silence filled the room. For the first time in years, Jessica slept without interruption. Jessica thinks the storm has passed. But when Victor's powerful family gets involved, the truth of her past, and the lies that bound her marriage, will finally be dragged into the light. The villa was quiet, heavy with tension, when Jessica finally returned. She wasn't here to reconcile. She was here to end it. Victor's grandfather sat in the main hall, his cane beside him. His breathing shallow but his eyes sharp. He had always been the one person in that family who treated Jessica with a measure of respect. Now, as she bowed her head politely, he asked the question no one else dared. Jessica, why do you want to end this marriage? Her throat tightened, but she spoke clearly. Because a forced marriage will never be sweet. The words dropped like stones into still water. Grandpa's cane slammed against the floor. Did that boy do something wrong to you? His glare burned into Victor. Tell me, did you hurt her? Victor fell to his knees, silent, accepting the blows of the cane across his back without resistance. His jaw clenched, but he didn't fight back. For once, he had no defense. Jessica stepped forward, her voice steady. Grandpa, it's not just Victor. It's me. I can't live like this anymore. She pulled out a small bank book and a card, placing them on the table. This is the money Victor sent me all these years. I never touched it. Not a cent. I never accepted it as compensation for what I lost. Victor's head snapped up, eyes wide. Then, how did you survive abroad all those years? Jessica laughed bitterly. I washed dishes. I worked 3 jobs a day. I starved. But I never spent your money, Victor. Because once I did. It meant I accepted what you and Emma did to me. Her voice shook now, emotion spilling through the cracks. You ruined me so terribly. What made you think I would ever forgive you? Tears welled unbidden, sliding down her cheeks. For years, she had trained herself not to cry in front of him. Tonight, she let the tears fall. Grandpa's face crumpled with grief. You ungrateful brat, he roared, swinging his cane again at Victor. How could you destroy her like this? Victor bowed his head, voice hoarse, breaking. I am sorry. I'll repay everything I owe you. Jessica turned away, her heart both heavy and strangely light. For once, Victor's arrogance was gone. He looked like a man stripped bare, drowning in guilt too late to save him. A few days later, Jessica learned what he meant by repayment. The headlines blazed across every outlet, renowned artist exposed. Emma's career built on plagiarism. Victor had done it. He had handed the evidence to the media, destroying Emma's carefully crafted image in a single blow. For years, Emma had stolen Jessica's work, presenting it as her own. Now, the truth was public. Emma, the darling of the art world, was nothing but a fraud. Overnight, she went from celebrated painter to disgraced plagiarist. But for Jessica, there was no victory, no relief, only emptiness. Emma, humiliated and desperate, isn't finished. She will confront Jessica face to face, armed with one last lie, a claim that threatens to pull Victor, Lucas, and Jessica into one final collision. The cafe was warm, sunlight spilling across polished tables and porcelain cups. Jessica sat by the window, her suitcase tucked against her legs. She had already bought her ticket. This was just a stop on the way out of the city, the way out of the past. Then Emma walked in. She was thinner now, the confidence she once carried like perfume replaced with unease. Still, she smiled as if nothing had changed. She pushed away the coffee Jessica had ordered for her and rested her hand over her stomach. I'm pregnant, she announced, her voice trembling between pride and fear. Victor's child. Jessica stared at her, silent for a long moment. Then she gave a small smile, soft but cutting. Then I wish you and your family of 4 happiness. Emma's face faltered. Before she could reply, the air shifted. Victor stood behind her, his expression thunderous. Without hesitation, he picked up the untouched coffee and poured it over Emma's head. The cafe froze, gasps filling the room as hot liquid dripped down Emma's face. How could you? She cried, her voice breaking. After everything, you humiliate me for her. But Victor didn't flinch. The child isn't mine. Stop lying. Emma's composure shattered. She stumbled out of the cafe, tears streaking her face, leaving behind only silence. Jessica looked at Victor, unimpressed. His rage meant nothing to her anymore. She checked her watch. I have a flight to catch. Victor's voice cracked. Jessica, do you hate me so much you'd rather leave? Her eyes met his, calm, resolved. I don't love you. And I don't hate you either. The words stunned him. His posture sagged, as if the life had been drained out of him. Jessica rose, suitcase in hand, and walked out. At the airport, security lines stretched long. When she glanced back, she wasn't surprised to see Victor standing near the gate, Lucas beside him. The boy's face was pale, uncertain. A passerby asked Jessica for a pen to fill out a form. She pulled one from her bag, the same pen Victor had once given her years ago, and handed it over. Keep it, she said with a smile. Victor's eyes darkened. The memory cut through him like glass. Jessica turned away. As the plane lifted off, she pressed her forehead to the window. The city below shrank. The past reduced to small, distant shapes. The clouds swallowed it whole. For the first time, She wasn't afraid. She was free. Later, Victor found her old journal in the trash. He read her words, page by page. Realizing how she had suffered, how she had survived, how she had rebuilt herself. He never sought her out again, not directly. Instead, he lingered at the edges of her life, sometimes showing up only to watch from afar as she smiled in ways she never had with him. Lucas grew older, sending letters she never answered. Still, he wrote, clumsy at first, then neat and steady, telling her about piano lessons, schoolwork, the little victories of a boy growing into a man. Victor, haunted, bought her paintings anonymously, donating them back to the children she taught in the mountains. He gave without asking for thanks, without daring to step into her light again. Because Jessica had said it once. Simply, clearly, "Can you please stop bothering me?" And finally, he understood. The story of Jessica isn't about revenge or winning someone back. It's about reclaiming herself, walking away, choosing dignity over despair. Because sometimes the bravest thing a woman can do is leave.